Hey, welcome to Checkpoint Esports and Gaming Radio. We're here at the Esports Business Summit at Caesars Las Vegas, and we are excited to be sitting down with Arnold Herr, Chief Growth Officer for Gen.G Esports. Arnold, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.
So Gen.G has recently had a rebranding. Your organization was formerly known as KSV. As the chief growth officer, how much of a challenge has rebranding in such a fast-paced industry like esports been?
It's always tough, right? I think we were just getting started, and we quickly realized that KSV, it originally stood for Korea, Silicon Valley, and as we expanded into China, expanded into Los Angeles, and obviously Seoul, we were kind of, the name just didn't fit anymore, and it was kind of always a temporary placeholder. And then now the big challenge is getting our name out there, both in the U.S. And in Korea, and that's something that we're always trying to work on now.
So Gen.G recently denied a spot at Worlds from SK Telecom, which is, of course, probably the most dominant team in the history of League of Legends. I'm kind of curious, what's the mindset with everyone at Gen.G when you're going into the finals facing off against SKT, and what was the reaction afterwards?
Yeah, it was nuts. I feel like people always look at just the results of whatever happens. They're like, oh, they won this game, they really pulled through here, but people really don't understand like how much work actually goes in, especially for an LCK team. Right?
Oh yeah.
In answering your question, like it's insane, right? I mean, I have the easy job, right? I go,
right.
I watch, I high five when they win, and then I get depressed when they lose.
Well, it's especially for North American teams who maybe don't watch LCK play until Worlds time.
Yep.
It's really a whole different beast over in the Korean region. I mean, every team in Korea would be a top tier team in North America. So it's really something to see, and especially, going up against SKT, that's very difficult. So, I mean, first of all, congratulations to you guys on making it. As we look forward towards Worlds, what's the team's mindset right now?
Man, this team is incredible. So, one of the things is you can see, whether or not, how far we go, whether or not we win the whole thing. I really, really respect that they play like champions. So a great example is, after that brutal gauntlet, the next day, Haru and Cuvee, by the way, this was their only vacation before they start getting ready for Worlds. The next morning, they were there in our HQ, just scrimming and practicing, on their first day of vacation. And I feel like that's really what separates the LCK region.
Well, in South Korea is worth knowing. I mean, esports has been such a major thing there for a long time. Yep. I mean, as much as it's really grown in North America in the last few years, in the 90s even, I mean, esports stars were, rock stars over there. So it really goes to show the level of dedication you have to be a competitor in South Korea.
Yeah, and I think that's just a level of competition, just how seriously they take it. And I think one thing to be said is the coaching infrastructure is really strong. So, for instance, there's a whole way that they practice, and it's one of the big things that I learned, working in esports in Korea is the coach's job is actually, sometimes it's to actually pull them away from the game, because they'll just, be so competitive that they'll just burn themselves out. So the coach often says, sometimes my job is to make them go, work out, or make them go, have a day off, and force them to turn the internet off and everything, just because, that's one of those things where, we realize that a lot of it's kind of a mental game, and they're masters of managing kind of the mental side.
I'm actually really curious to know, since you have, so much experience working with Korean esports, what do you think that the North American esports scene could adopt from the Korean esports scene to, I don't know, maybe try to improve their chances, improve their performance, or even really rise to the same cultural standing that esports has in Korea?
I really feel like a lot of it has to do with just the dedication and being surrounded by that hyper-competitive environment. Mm-hmm. So a great example is, we have a practice, right? It starts at, let's say, 11 a.m., usually done by 5 p.m.
Sure.
Right? And that seems like a normal day job kind of hour. But right after that, they're working on the things that they messed up on. They're not trying to have fun playing the game. They're like, okay, well, practice went pretty well today, but I messed up on ABC. I'm going to go solo queue and work on ABC. Mm-hmm. But imagine that kind of 6 days a week, and it's really self-driven, where, like I said, our coach is like, no, guys, take the day off, but, they're going at it by themselves. So that's one of those things that I think really separates kind of the LCK region especially, or Korean esports in general, is really that competitive environment of, hey, you know what? It's kind of like when you hear stories about Kobe Bryant. Yeah. And how he's, out there in the gym at 5 a.m. just grinding away. All right, these guys are not. They're usually staying up till 5 a.m., not getting up at 5 a.m.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But I think that's really the difference maker.
So turning our attention maybe away from League of Legends and onto other esports, Gen.G is expanding into Overwatch, PUBG, really everything that's making names in esports. What has growth and expansion been like for the other games?
Yeah, so it's been really exciting. I think really having actually one of those big things that we're doing is we have a really strong presence in North America as well, and really getting kind of that global fan base has been really exciting for us. I mean, PUBG, it's still very young as an esport, but we were able to be successful. We got the World Championship in TPP, and now as we move towards a more kind of regulated, one FPP kind of game set, I think the region as a whole is really excited. Like, great example there is, all the players wanted FPP, and they really felt that it was kind of almost annoying that they couldn't practice and grind to be the best, because we understand that Europe has a much longer history on first-person shooters, but the teams feel like, hey, you know what, just let us practice. And let us play, and I think they feel very confident that over time they can be the best.
So I'd like to specifically kind of focus on OWL and League of Legends for a second. Both of them have entered a franchise model. Have you noticed any differences or any advantages or disadvantages with a regional system attached to a team like the Seoul Dynasty?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing around the franchise model, of course the regional aspect is exciting because it's an easy way for fans to jump in and pick a team, right?
Right, yeah.
But I think the other part that's really exciting around a franchise system is you've got an amazing group of owners, right? You got some of the best, brightest people, and then myself, really jumping in and really figuring out ways to bring innovation, bring new talent, bring new, bring new things that help kind of level up the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've already seen that, right? With the progress that the Overwatch League has made, with League of Legends and kind of bringing on those global sponsors. I really appreciate the fact that they're able to kind of level up the entire ecosystem. And as as kind of an ownership group, one of the big things is we're also able to make bigger, better investments because of a franchise system. So, one of the things is we actually, this is kind of random, but, we're probably one of the first esports teams that actually pays for physical personal training of all our players. At first, I thought all the guys would just hate it, just because it doesn't seem kind of like the esports culture, but man, some of the guys are going like 2-3 times a week. Like Yu Jae Hong, he's actually going 3 times a week now because he's like, hey, I'm getting older. I wake up, I'm kind of tired.
Well, and we've seen that with in between OWL players where now there's like competitions of who can bench more. I know that when we talked to Mickey a couple of months ago, he was bragging about how much he could bench. So I mean, I think that physical fitness is actually a pretty big aspect to esports and being able to maintain not just the physical health but the mental health of your athletes as well.
It's kind of like a whole 360 thing, right? Like, it's not just the physical help. We also have kind of sports psychologists on staff, because as you know, when it comes to let's say carrying the Seoul Dynasty name, you're talking about a very passionate fan base, which causes a lot of stress for these guys, right? Imagine being 19, 20 years old and every mistake you make, or you just have a bad day and you say the wrong thing, you play the wrong way, and of course that's their responsibility, of course, to manage their social media, to manage everything, but just the amount of stress that these guys go through and how little time they have to kind of manage it or have good role models. I think that's one thing that where we have a big advantage is that we have kind of industry veterans, like Chi-Hoon Lee from KT and, from FIFA days, back in the day. They're actually able to talk to these guys and they kind of become role models, just the same way in the NBA you would have kind of the older guys that kind of sit on the end of the bench, but they kind of, help guide you and help you deal with all sorts of stuff, whether it's money or whether it's dealing with fans or whether it's, playing the game, right?
What types of social media training are players receiving? Because that seems to be, I mean, it's at the same time your biggest asset and your biggest potential liability.
Yep. So one thing that's really interesting is that in Korea, a lot of these guys aren't as active as some of the Western players.
That makes sense.
One of the things though is, we do provide them kind of a full-on PR training. We provide them social media training. And at the end of the day, we kind of tell them, look, it's your responsibility. You should be free to express yourselves. And we're actually much more liberal than any other Korean esports organization, because we are kind of actually a Western organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're very, very liberal when it comes to, hey, you know what? Go and express yourself. You guys should feel free to go and build your brand. We encourage it. At the same time, you are 100% responsible for the things you say.
Absolutely.
If you want advice from us, we're happy to give it, but it's kind of your responsibility.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to know the box and the expectations that you have to work in to be able to navigate something like that.
Yeah, and it's. I actually think it's a really, really tough job for these guys. I mean, you think about, I realized like when I was like 18, 19 years old. If I was on a public platform, like I don't know if I would be able to manage it, right?
Totally, right? Like, who knows where I would be if Twitter was a thing when I was 16?
I have an idea. One thing I want to hit on is the new LCK arena. Have you gotten to see it, and is it awesome?
Oh man, it is really cool.
Man, we saw pictures of it, and we were like, "Oh, we need to see this. This is so cool."
We're super pumped about it. It was really sad to kind of go through some of the last matches.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
They were emotional just on the stream.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. We saw some of the the goodbye videos and stuff like that, and yeah, it truly was emotional.
It kind of felt like in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when Will Smith kind of has that last episode.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's always nice to kind of leave something, but have something very new and shiny kind of in front of you.
Yeah.
And I do feel like it's kind of elevating esports to become almost a cultural, social phenomenon where in Korea, like to be honest, the basketball teams are good, but there's no place for celebrities, for friends to go to as kind of a social scene. I actually really believe esports is going to fill that void, and I see that happening with Burbank Arena. I see that happening with stuff in Seoul, where this is becoming kind of the kind of social gathering for the next generation, right?
I think about GSL and StarCraft and how well that does over there.
Yeah, no, we were actually shocked by how well that did, right? And the viewership and the passion. And I'm not a big StarCraft guy, which is kind of like I feel like a heathen to say that coming from the Korea region.
It's okay. I'm the only one on the show who's a big StarCraft fan, so.
But it's fantastic, right? Like
I love it.
Man, it is really cool. And I think we're actually, what's really interesting is even in LA, so we have a really, really big LA presence. We got an office in LA. We're building out an HQ in LA. We got everything up and ready, right? And it's really exciting to kind of see that, esports is becoming that next cool thing to go to, right? In Burbank Arena, we have a bunch of celebrities that are coming in there. In Seoul, we kind of have the same thing. And then now we finally have the facilities to help, back that up and give them a place that they can actually go.
So I've got to ask, in light of OWL and League of Legends and how successful they've been this past year, we've been seeing some struggles with PUBG. PUBG, even the developers have come out and said, it's not quite esports ready. We know that you guys have a team and are active in the space. Have you noticed any impact, from that in what you do for Gen.G?
Yeah. So, I think what was really interesting was that really the Korea region was kind of used almost as kind of a case study, right? To figure out like how do you get all these things up and running? How do you get teams up and running?
Well, from a technical direction standpoint, it's got to be really crazy, on the other side of that broadcast booth.
The beta season was kind of rough. Like there were some delays.
It was.
There was stuff where and you know what? I gotta shout out to all the casters out there that. I don't know how they talk for 3 hours straight. I don't know what you're talking about for 3 hours, but one thing that we're really excited about, I'm actually very, very excited about the PUBG esports scene. I think, as they become, I feel like they're really positioning themselves as kind of like that hardcore esport.
Yeah.
And I think it's gonna work. Like, we saw it at PGI, and I know not that many Western fans saw PGI, but It was exciting, man. Like just the improvements they've made, like the tracer fire and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really exciting. And I think it also opens up some new technical challenges. Like, hey, is there a way to, watch a specific team and follow them and follow their journey?
Yeah.
And I love the stuff around recasting, and I know that's happening across the board around esports. I think you're going to see a lot of new technical or technological innovations that help elevate PUBG as an esport. And I love the fact that they're positioning themselves as like, hey, we take esports really seriously. We're going to help move the ball forward and kind of standardizing the rule sets, standardizing everything so that the teams can do what they want to do, right? Which is practice, try to beat other teams, and then hopefully do well.
Arnold Herr, Chief Growth Officer for Gen.G Esports, has been our guest here on Checkpoint. Arnold, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.